What's up YouTube? Jeff back again from High on Android, dopetechdaily.com, and today I'm here with my full review of the Honor 5X. Now I got this phone about 3.5–4 weeks ago when I was at CES in Las Vegas. We went to the Honor/Huawei event the first night I got there. Me, Max, quite a few other YouTubers. They gave us free media review units to everybody who was in attendance, so I really appreciate that. Big shout out to Honor and Huawei for that. I really enjoyed using the phone, getting a chance to tell you guys what it's all about. So as usual, if you're a regular on the channel, if you're new, I like to keep a Google Keep document. This is something, yes, I stole from MKBHD. It's just a great idea when you're doing a review. Keep all of your notes as you go along. Then you can go through those in your video. Of course, I don't put them in quite as nicely in terms of art as MKBHD does, but we'll run through these, make sure I don't miss anything. So let's go through first and talk about the build of this phone. You can see on the back it's got the nice brushed aluminum look on the back here. This is the silver model. Also comes in gold. You got some Honor branding, some FCC data, fingerprint scanner, your camera module. Around front you got your front facing camera. On the bottom you can see here you've actually got two speaker grills here, even though the phone itself only has one speaker. That's pretty common for companies to do that just for symmetry, and you can sort of see that in this case. You've got, of course, your micro USB charging port, and then around the sides you can see it sort of continues the metal theme. You've got dual SIM slots here on the side. You also got room for a micro SD card here, and you do have chunky bezels around the front of the phone, especially on the bottom. This is really sort of a nice feeling phone. It's sort of nondescript though, nothing that's going to really make it stand out in a crowd. It's also a little bit lighter than I would like, so you think if you have a metal phone it's going to be kind of have some weight to it, a little bit of heft, which makes the phone feel premium. Of course, this phone is a $199 phone, so we got to keep that in mind throughout the entire review. You also see on the top and bottom there's sort of discoloration, or not a discoloration, but a change in color from where the brushed metal meets this plastic piece here at the bottom where they store the antennas. That's also the similar case with the Nexus 6P, so no big deal. Overall, I like the way the phone looks. I think it looks really kind of premium if you're just looking at it for a $199 phone, but it would be nice to have it a little bit heavier, but again, I can't really take points away since it's a $199 phone. Alright, so that's mostly what I have to say about the build. One big thing that I want to talk about next that I mentioned in the build but really has to do with the display quality, and that is how easily this phone gets fingerprints. So you can probably already see here, if I get it in the right light, this phone has a ton of smudges on it, and I wiped it down with a microfiber cloth, it's right here, before I started the video. And if you get this phone, you're going to be wiping down the screen virtually all the time. This phone has no Gorilla Glass, and it also has no oleophobic coating on the front of the screen. I don't know why they chose to do that. Maybe, I guess, to continue cutting the cost. But it's a very unfortunate decision because in addition to not having Gorilla Glass for drop protection, scratch protection, the oleophobic coating makes sure that you get these smudges all day. So if you're incredibly OCD, that's going to be very, very annoying. If you're not worried about the smudges, the screen itself is actually really nice. You get some nice vibrant colors. So if I go in here and we look at the gallery really quick, I can show you a few pictures I've taken. You can see, for instance here, took some pictures of some flowers. We'll talk a little more about these when we get into the camera. But the display itself gives you a nice range of colors, and in addition to that, gives you pretty nice blacks. For a 1080p LCD panel, you can see I have a black background there. It's actually a pretty deep black for an LCD panel, which I was pretty impressed with overall. It's also got pretty good viewing angles for a $199 phone. They're definitely not going to beat, the highest end displays out there in the smartphone game. Of course, it's also not as saturated as maybe a Samsung AMOLED panel, but at the end of the day, display is not bad. Again, the main thing that I would point out is if you have a problem with smudges, you're definitely going to need maybe 1, 2, maybe 10 microfiber cleaning cloths with you at all times just to make sure you can get rid of them, because they're going to be there sort of all day when you're talking about this phone. The next thing is the fingerprint scanner. So the fingerprint scanner on this phone is one of the most impressive features. For $199, there are very few phones that you're going to find a fingerprint scanner on. Well, you can find a few blue phones, that's true. There are a few other budget phones out there that have this feature, but there are very few that you're going to find that actually have a really good fingerprint scanner. And you can see here, as I use it, the fingerprint scanner on here is not only fast, but it's incredibly accurate. As you can see, every time it easily recognizes my fingerprint, absolutely no problems at all, continues to open it. Now I compared the fingerprint scanner on the Huawei Nexus 6P to the Honor 5X just for testing, And the 6P is a little bit faster, but again, that's a $499 phone at its base price, so that's exactly what you would expect. But the phone for the Honor 5X actually has an amazing fingerprint scanner for the price. I was really, really impressed. Incredibly accurate, incredibly fast. In fact, the fingerprint scanner on here, I would say, is faster and more accurate than the Note 5, and it's also much faster and more accurate than the LG V10. And the LG V10 has one of the worst fingerprint scanners on a phone today. I've talked about that in several videos, so check out my series on that. But this phone is very impressive in the fingerprint category for its price. So that is definitely a bonus and definitely a nice thing about the Honor 5X. So the next thing I want to talk about is software, and this is the place where if you're impressed with the build, you're impressed with the fingerprint scanner, this is the place where you're going to be a little disappointed with the Honor 5X. Now it's running Android, of course, but it's running it with the EMUI skin from Huawei/Honor. And as you can see, one thing that jumps out at you right away is that this phone has no traditional app drawer that you would find on Android. In fact, the only thing you can really see that looks like traditional Android are the back button, the home button, and then the recent app button, which you can click and you do get your recent apps. But you see that you have no app drawer, which is really annoying to a lot of people. That's just the first of many differences that you'll find here. If you go to the notification shade, you'll also see your notifications are separated from your quick settings, which are labeled as shortcuts by the Honor and Huawei brand. You get your time here, your notifications, which also come in with a lot of different toggles that are not standard to Android. So those are a couple problems that, one, you can fix the problem of not having an app drawer by installing a third-party launcher, and you can see right there, I installed Nova Launcher after a week of using EMUI just because it was so incredibly annoying to me. I couldn't really take the experience overall. But if that was the only problem, you could sort of fix most of that with installing Nova, installing your favorite third-party launcher. That's fine. You could even change the icons, which are also a little annoying because they get cut off. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there's an even worse problem going on here with the software. And the problem that I have with the software is that Huawei/Honor have introduced a whole lot of weird features that help you save battery, but you don't even need to save battery. The battery life on this phone is quite good. And the first of those features is that if you go into the power saving setting inside your settings menu, you'll see there are three modes there: Ultra, Smart, and Normal. And right out of the box, the Smart mode is enabled, which said it automatically adjusts the CPU and network usage for balanced performance, recommended for daily use. You do not need this for daily use, I can tell you, and I switched mine to normal as soon as I realized that this was sort of slowing down my phone. If you run it on Smart, you're definitely going to notice some lag with this phone, but on normal it runs perfectly fine. The next thing that you're going to notice, if you go into your settings menu here for the power consumption, you're going to notice this power intensive prompt, and you're going to get this with every single app until you turn it on, or until you turn it off. So if you turn this on, which is on by default, which is really annoying, I don't know why Honor decided to leave all of these annoying things on by default out of the box, it's going to notify you every time an app is using significant battery. Of course, on Android, apps can run in the background, so very often lots of your apps will be using significant battery. So that's something I turned off once I noticed it, but it's on by default and technically shouldn't even be there because, again, Android itself has lots of apps running in the background. I don't need to be notified about that. So those are two huge problems, and you might think, well, maybe it just stops there. Maybe those are the only big problems. Unfortunately, that's not the case. If you look here in the protected apps section of your power saving mode, there's a bunch of apps here, and you can see all of them are actually selected in this case. But if you actually turn the phone on and just start using it out of the box, you'll find that only 6 of your apps have actually been listed as protected apps. Now, what does that actually mean? It means that these are the only apps that you can allow to run while the screen is off. So that means if you don't have your protected apps selected, you're not going to get your notifications. Facebook, Falcon Pro for Twitter, Instagram, Messenger, anything that I have here that gets notifications is not going to work when the screen's off, and you're going to miss all your notifications unless you have it selected. The terrible thing is they only have 6 apps selected by default right out of the box. So you have to go in here and physically check to select all of these. So you can go into menu, you can see right there, you can go to add all or remove all. I checked add all, and then I was back to getting my notifications. But for a less tech-savvy customer who buys this phone, which a lot of people might because it's $200, they're going to wonder, why am I not getting my notifications? and then they have to go in here and try to figure this out, that might not be easy for someone who doesn't know anything about tech. So yes, the software itself is colorful, and yes, it has a lot of similarities to iOS. Those sort of things could be fixed by a third-party launcher, but these problems that are embedded, like having default power-saving features that don't let you get your notifications, that take away performance from the phone with the CPU being clocked down, those are huge problems, and that's something that Honor and Huawei should have considered not doing. It really hurts the experience of the phone overall. So let's see if I mentioned everything in my software list here. Yes, they made some strange default choices, gives you bad performance, only 6 hours to run, 6 apps to run, which is ridiculous. You can receive all notifications, but you have to change it. Every time you get a new app, you'll also get a prompt that tells you you need to choose if you want to let that app continue to give you notifications. So that means every time you get a notification from a social media app, you have to tell the phone whether or not you want to let it keep coming in, which is crazy because even if you select yes to all of that, the phone still only allows 6 apps to be selected by default. So you need to go in and actually change your protected apps to select all, otherwise you're going to have this huge problem. And then lastly, I mentioned here earlier, the icons kind of look terrible on here. You can see a few of them if we go into the stock Google apps. You can see like the Google Maps icon. You can see the little pen here. It's completely cut off to fit into this rounded cookie cutter shape that Huawei and Honor have decided to put on the phone. So that's just a minor annoyance. Of course, if you install Nova, you throw a custom icon pack on here, you'll be good to go. And that's exactly what I did. I just switched back to EMUI to show you guys what I was working with here in the actual review. So again, with the software wrap, I would say you should probably use a third-party launcher unless you really just love something that looks like iOS but also has all these annoying features. Now that you're aware of them, you can take care of the protected apps and sort of use that as a feature instead of, one where you're not going to get your notifications and wonder what's going on. So again, the less tech-savvy consumers, that's going to be a big problem for them. If you know all these things like me, you know what to look for, you could figure that out. But this is a problem for Huawei if they want to sell a budget phone to people who don't know all of these things. The next thing, so that's the wrap up on the software. The next thing is the camera app. So I actually like the camera a lot on this phone, and you can see here it has a very simple, clean interface. You can see here there's a couple modes at the bottom. You've got beauty, regular photo, video, time lapse, and then you can see one there that's kind of, maybe not familiar to you, good food if you swipe over. It's kind of an interesting mode. This is again a phone that's made by a Chinese company in China and also in the US. A lot of people like to take pictures of their food. So this is a mode that says here, use it to take more appealing close-up shots of your food. So if it's something you like to do, if you're a foodie, you want to take pictures of your food, that's an interesting mode to include, something we don't normally see. Now the toggles are pretty nice. You've got metering, you've got focus, you've got a brightness slider here. You can change the brightness on your photo. Up at the top, you've also got some settings. You've got panorama, HDR, all focus, best photo, watermark, slow-mo, and you can also take an audio note. So one thing that bothers me a little bit about the camera interface is it would be nice to have HDR mode on auto, but instead you have to select it in the settings, and you can see here that it stays on until you turn it off up here with this little X. Now that's a little annoying because on this phone, in mediocre lighting situations, you're going to need HDR mode to get really good shots. So if you have great lighting, then you're going to have no problems whatsoever. But if you have mediocre lighting, you're definitely going to need HDR on to get the best shots possible. So I definitely recommend turning HDR on if you have any struggles, and typically that worked for me unless I had incredibly low lighting, in which case, again, this is a lower end phone, and normally we see in bad lighting, we're going to get softer, even blurry pictures, and that's exactly what happens here. So you can see a few of the photos I took. If I go back to the gallery I was showing you guys earlier, you can see here, these photos are pretty crisp, and again, I'll try to put a photo album. That one I didn't get good focus. That wasn't the camera's fault. These were in average lighting because this was an overcast day. I took this indoors. This was at the Fan Fest for the Alabama football game. I showed you guys some pictures from the stadium last time. These were indoors at the Fan Fest in downtown Phoenix. Took a lot of photos and different videos and to see the quality. The quality is quite good for a camera, again, of this quality for $199. You don't expect to get that much in a phone of this quality. There you can see the Geekbench 3 score as well, which is actually really low, but in my experience didn't really affect the performance. But overall, you can see the camera takes some pretty good shots. I was impressed with the quality for the price, and the front-facing camera is actually really impressive. So I took a few selfies, and I was really impressed. Even in pretty bad indoor lighting, the front-facing camera is really nice. It's actually probably more impressive than the rear-facing camera. So pretty standard story. With a phone for $199, you get good pictures in good lighting. Good but not great. In bad lighting, your pictures are probably going to be mostly really soft or even blurry. And if you leave HDR mode on, you can sort of bridge the gap. In mediocre lighting, you can get better pictures if you turn on HDR. So overall, I was not too upset with the camera. I was pretty happy with it. Again, this is a $199 phone. Trying to sort of judge everything based on that. I would like to see HDR on auto instead of having to toggle that on and off. The next thing is the battery life, and I sort of already mentioned this. I just again charged the phone so I could go through and work with this. You can see here if I do the battery here, you can see I got using the screen for the video obviously, using it for 32 minutes and I've only drained 9% of the battery. That's pretty indicative of the experience I've had with this phone. You can get some really impressive battery life. I've gotten between 4 and 5.5 hours depending on how much I use it. And again, you can see here sort of the list of things that I wrote down that I was using with it. I was using social media, so Falcon Pro, Instagram, Facebook, etc., Netflix, YouTube, gaming with Temple Run 2 and also with One More Dash, and uploading files to Dropbox for my work. And I got really 4 to 4.5 hours on average with moderate to really heavy use, and pretty impressive. Overall, it got me through a day. Every single day that I used it, probably have 10-20% left over at the end of the night when I decide to charge up. So you can definitely use this phone for a full day and not have any big problems. The odds and ends, I'll come back to that at the end. The speakers on this phone, again, by that I mean speaker, because as I mentioned, it's got 2 grills but only 1 speaker. It's incredibly loud, but the problem is that even though it's really loud, the clarity is really bad at high volumes, which you would expect. But if you keep it at medium volumes for watching videos or for gaming, listening to audio even, you're going to have absolutely no problems. It's actually louder than the Note 5 and louder than the LG V10, which are flagship phones, so that's pretty impressive. The performance, this guy's got a Snapdragon 615. I had absolutely no problems. You can see it's super snappy. One of the things that you definitely want to do to make sure you get that nice performance, you can see that apps will open relatively quickly, and you don't have that much input lag sort of in terms of the UI. If you go, you're going to be able to swipe pretty quick. You can flip through your recent apps pretty quickly without much lag as you get going there. There, I'm trying to close some apps. But you can see it's nice and snappy overall. The only problem is if you don't go in here and turn off that power saving mode, so if you go into power saving, you really want to make sure you have it turned from smart onto normal, and then you're going to get good performance. So again, the battery life is pretty good on this phone. It's actually impressive, so there's no reason not to have it on normal mode, and then you're going to get excellent performance. I played quite a few games, as I mentioned. Again, all my apps are disorganized because I just turned it back on EMUI. One More Dash, Temple Run. I think I played some Balloon Tower Defense as well. I had no problems. There are a few drop frames here and there in Temple Run because, of course, this is not a high-end flagship. But for the most part, the graphics performance was pretty impressive. And in just your moderate gaming, you're going to be pretty happy with this phone for $199 in that category. Oh, and some odds and ends. So a few people asked me about SD card support. That's listed officially on the specs, so that's pretty obvious. You're definitely going to need that because it has about 9 gigabytes available out of the box. That's pretty low if you're going to store any apps, games, music. It also doesn't have OTG support. Someone asked about that as well. I tested it with my OTG drive, so it does not have that. Call quality has been really good, so I've gotten some of my fastest LTE speeds, some of my best call quality actually when pairing this with my Tone Infinim here in Phoenix. I've had absolutely no problems whatsoever in terms of the call quality. So those are a few of the questions I got. Even in rural areas, it's been fantastic running on T-Mobile. So sort of to wrap up, the phone at $199, it's a great value, and if you can deal with the software, the hardware itself is really impressive. So do I recommend this phone to you? Well, that really depends. If you're a tech-savvy person like me, you can deal with all of the sort of power-saving features. You can switch off the defaults, get it to the settings you want, throw a custom launcher on here, custom icons, then yes, the hardware itself is very good. But there's still going to be some software annoyances, like you have to deal with the notification shade. Custom launcher is not going to fix that. You have to deal with the weird way that it handles your notifications, as you can see there. And it's just not sort of a stock Android experience. So if you can't handle anything aside from stock Android, there's all these extra features, quote unquote, that Honor and Huawei have put on here that you won't like. But if you can deal with that, you can get past that, and the custom launcher is enough to make you happy, which I didn't have any problems once I threw Nova on there, fixed the problems with power consumption. The phone itself performs really well with a solid camera and good battery life for only $199. It's pretty tough to beat that. Now I am going to order a OnePlus X because I really want to compare this phone to the OnePlus X and see how they perform because I haven't gotten one yet. So I'll have that comparison coming up on the channel as well. So that's my full review of the Honor 5X. I think it's a solid phone aside from those glaring software issues, which you'll have to look past if you want to get this excellent deal. Let me know if you guys have any questions down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. You can find me writing over at news.highonandroid.com, dopetechdaily.com. You can also follow me at Twitter and Google Plus at the links in the description. If you guys would like the video, if you enjoy this content, subscribe if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching.